I love cookies. I love cookies. I love cookies. I love cookies.
Welcome to Cookies, the world's most influential basketball podcast. I am Ben Dietrich. Jordan Rodelli is on vacation, but Andrew Kuo does not take days off, and accordingly, he is here today. Andrew Kuo, why are you so excited on this gloomy Monday?
You know why? You know why I'm so excited?
No, that's why I'm asking.
Because I take no days off from biohacking, man. I am a full-on biohacker. And you know what I'm doing? I'm showering less these days. That's right. Some people don't think they need sleep. Some people don't think they need solid food. Some people think they can just drink Soylent to live and live on the internet in some weird virtual farm. Me, I'm showering maybe 40% as much as I used to.
So this sounds a bit like that sensational new video game, Cyberpunk 2077, where everyone's adjusting the size of their wieners, but in your case, you're adjusting your showers to almost none. Like your shower sliders are really shifting towards the far end.
In an ideal world, I would never need to drink water ever again, and also never shower ever again.
You've often talked about this friend, and I'm using air quotes around it, this friend of yours who doesn't like drinking water because it doesn't have a, quote, taste.
I have multiple, quote unquote, air quote friends.
Are you this, quote, air quote, friend?
No, I like water in phases. Sometimes I'll drink a ton of it, and sometimes it's boring as all hell. It probably coincides with like how salty the food I am. I'm eating.
That another biohack. If you want to make it a more challenging and exciting exercise, you can do what the founder of Peloton does, which is 40 little cups of water into his hands every morning and like splashes it down his face.
Wait, why 40?
That's what he said he does. He said he cups water and like chugs it through his hands until he's fully hydrated and wants to throw up every single morning. And people made fun of him for this and were like, why don't you invent a glass?
Nice burn, internet. I like it. Yeah. I mean, this kind of reminds me of like the amazing, tragic also story of Tony Hsieh, right? The guy who ran Zappos and got obsessed with biohacking and ended up staring at candles and doing a bunch of whippets and kind of losing his mind, right? So like you're the Peloton guy or you're the Zappos guy who do this thing that society rewards in ways that you can't even imagine, like in billions of dollars. And then you're like, well, what envelope can I push? I can't make the Knicks win by myself. That's not enough money to buy the Knicks. I'm going to stop sleeping.
Well, once you are graduated from the typical concerns of a regular person, putting food on the table, putting a roof over your head,
waking up early for a meeting, shit like that,
all that stuff, and you're left to your own most insane devices. I think there's a rich history of this. Howard Hughes,
Spruce Moose.
Yeah, the eccentricism of extraordinary wealth, and we've seen it with guys like Kanye. Like you just get into shit.
Yeah, RJ Barrett's not really acting normal anymore.
But in the way of the guy you were talking about, Tony Hsieh, like after a while, you are just outside of the corridors of normalcy, and then the human brain is like left to explore.
Yeah, and do you think like when that story dropped, a couple of my friends were like, "What's up with Asians, dude?" I'm like, "I don't know. What's up with people?" And I was like, "It's true because we get the rep of like being these like heartless, calculated math business kind of things in this world."
Yes, the inscrutable Asian.
Yeah. And then you get Tony Shea or me, someone who actually stares at Randall's. I watched that Knicks game, preseason game number 1, twice. 2 times, Ben.
I mean, they did have 2 games, so you could have watched both.
I watched
of
the
those.
second game once, like a normal person without billions of dollars. But
Not as an inscrutable Asian.
yeah. So I've been trying to shower less. First of all, kind of on purpose because I heard it's better for your skin. And since I'm not going out, I don't like. Also a biohack. I'm not like changing my clothes that much. I have a stack of white tees, so like.
Are you oozing at this point in your natural oils?
I don't know because
Snail trailing around the Lower East Side.
Because as I get older, unlike Jayson Tatum, like my skin is just drier, so I have like humidifiers now, so I can't tell where the balance is. But not showering as much is awesome. Let me tell you.
Has it upped your productivity?
Well, it's freed up like a good. I take very quick showers, so it's freed. I'm not a shower dude, so let me put that out there. I've never enjoyed any sort of cleansing activity, mental or physical.
Just a dirty lad.
I just don't enjoy like pampering. Let me put it that way. I don't like to steam, because there's stats to look at, Ben. There are games to break down. There's tape to run.
You don't want to be basking in the Russian baths, being
No, I hate that stuff.
With fronds of some sort of Slavic hedge by large shirtless men.
No, people have evolved to wear North Face and sweatpants at home and not worry about that bullshit. But yeah, so I take quick showers. So after a while, during quarantine, when it got colder, I was like, I try to work out every other day. Not every day because my knees will explode, but I shower then. But if I miss like 2 days of working out because there's too many Knicks games to watch, I won't shower for 2 days.
I was going to say, what's the word I'm looking for here? Your abandonment of the shower posse. Is it tied to the fact that there's less social occasions for which to inspire a shower? For example, if you were going to meet some friends, you might consider showering. If you were going out to dinner with your lady, you might say, this calls for a little time in the shower. Or if you went out and exercised and came home, you have to shower. Just, spend a day doing things. You're grimy. You've been outside all day. But how dirty are you getting in your own home?
Not that dirty. And I don't shower for other people, man. I shower because I'm a hypochondriac and I think the world is dirty, which it kind of is. Like if you walk around in the summer in New York City and just like look at your socks and shoes, you're like, oh, they're dirty now. It's just dirt and all kinds of dirt, spit, grime, soot, whatever. So that's important to do in New York, but I don't do it for other people. Please, Ben, please.
I was walking around yesterday trying to get a good 10,000 steps in. Just marching around, not really going anywhere. I did discover that I was heading mysteriously in the direction of the birria tacos, and I just had to go another way. I saw what I was doing.
Wow, it's like the new Magellan is the birria taco Magellan.
Yeah, I just found myself, oddly enough, wandering towards the taco truck. So I changed my direction. As I was going down a different street, a rat ran in front of me and I inadvertently kicked it.
Oh, so wow, Donovan Mitchell? You saw Did you get his autograph? Did you kick it with him?
He got a couple buckets as he ran off.
Yeah, me and Mitchell were just kicking it.
But for a second, I was like, "Is this horrifying? I just kicked a rat." And I was completely unbothered, absolutely unbothered. I was like, "Whoa! I just kicked a rat." Didn't bother me. But the point here is, that's the kind of thing that you do when you walk around the city. You get really dirty. You kick rats. You scuffle around in the leaves. People spit and poop. So I get it. If you're indoors, those hazards are not even on your mind.
I know you're a shoes off guy. Is it are are you shoes off in your house because of cleanliness or because of vibiness? Is it just like a nicer hang in socks, or do you think shoes are dirty?
Yeah, I think shoes are dirty.
Yeah, they are, for sure. I used to have a painting studio in Chinatown with a bunch of other people. That was an awesome place. It was a huge, like, full city block, and there was a lot of traffic. People were working with clients, and there was meetings, and there was people living there. And it was a shoes on situation in Chinatown in like the early aughts, which was a different Chinatown. And everyone had a perpetual cough, and I swore it was because the floors were so filthy that you could like wipe your finger on them and produce like a visible soot. It was intense.
I'm not a shoes off at a party person, though. If you're going to invite a group of people into your own home, unless you have carpets or something, I feel like you have to allow shoes on and then just like mop or vacuum or whatever afterwards. I don't think you can have more than like 5 people in your place and tell them to take shoes off.
So I had the last big party I had was like a zillion years ago. And it was, that stupid broken glass theory thing that they say? One glass, broken window. Mm-hmm. So if one window is broken in a building, then the chance of other windows being broken is...
Yes, this was the Giuliani NYPD, hassle everyone when they do basically nothing because it'll stop them from murdering.
Right. And so I had this situation, I kind of stumbled onto that idea with holding a party, a New Year's party. And it was shoes off. There was a lot of people invited, so the whole hallway was full of shoes. But one of my friends refused to take off her shoes because she was like, I wipe them clean. I'm okay. I don't need to do that. They're clean. And I'm like, but if people see you wearing shoes, they're going to see someone wearing shoes and be like, I can wear my shoes. And she was like, I just don't care about that. And in the moment, I thought she was wrong. And in reality, she was right.
I just think a party where everyone is barefoot is kind of odd vibes.
The height thing, I like it because I am not growing 2 inches every off season like Jayson Tatum.
Like Tobias Harris, yeah.
Like Tobias Harris, right. So I like that because I'm like, oh, I'm not as short as I thought I was because you're not as tall as I thought you were. But some people are very tall. Like you and Jordan are tall.
I also just think if you were going to create a party environment, you are opening up the possibility of things breaking, things being spilled, dirty shoes, maybe someone throwing up in a corner. Like there are an array of party options that are unpleasant. But if you are willing to undertake inviting people into your home, I think it's also weird to say, all right, you 15 people, shoes off in the hallway and walk around in your socks. Yeah. Like, what are we doing? Do you want pajamas? Yeah. Is this a slumber party?
Yeah. And also, kicks are cool. Like, I like looking at what people are wearing on their feet. I remember there used to be a thing where people said you can tell someone's personality by what shoes they have, which is getting less and less true because of monoculture and everyone's just wearing like different versions of the same thing now. But back in the day, it kind of used to be true, I thought. Now it's hats. You can tell a person's point of view just by what they do with their head.
Right. So if they, for example, are a Cookies Patreon subscriber, they get an Afterlife hat before they sell out. You know that they are on it. They get it.
They're ethical.
They know they're moral. Just a good person.
Mm-hmm. They're wandering tubs.
Well, dive into this theory a little bit. I'm very excited by it. What are you looking at when you look at headwear? What does it say? The cranial horoscope, if you will, about the person who is wearing it.
How did hats... I know hats are a thing. How did hats ever come into existence? I tried to watch Mank. I love David Fincher. So many fucking hats, man. I can't do it. Baseball caps are not hats. Yeah, I don't make the rules. I don't make the rules, man.
Awooga. Yeah, I get what you're saying. Because they're casual.
Yeah, they're utilitarian. They just have a different subcategory. If you had a perfect match on Rhea, and this person was into the same things, they were like, Maury's awesome, Hinky's the best, Tobias Harris is a net zero. You're like, oh, this is going to be a really fun first date. And they showed up in a hat. What would you do?
I mean, women in interesting hats.
Or men.
I thought you were talking about me personally.
Oh, no, the
you're
royal.
You're saying a royal we.
Yes.
The royal we. But I mean, is this person a hat wearer themselves? It depends on the eye of
that's a good point.
the beheaded.
They're the stupidest looking things, man. I had a roommate who once tried to wear a hat, and I was like, I just have to help. Like, I always threaten people, like my friends, being like, if you push me, I'm going to show up wearing a hat next time. Don't push me. It's hat season. I'm willing to die just to bite off my nose to spite your face. Is that how it works?
Mm-hmm. Now, you've beaten around the bush here. Refuse to answer my question. When people walk in with hats, what are you seeing? You say that's the new shoes. Shoes, you can tell. You can tell a person is by their shoes. What can you tell about them by their hat? What are you getting at here?
I like aspirational people, but there's a certain aspiration that loses me, and I feel like the hat is a projection into the universe. I'm a hat hater, whatever. It projects this energy into the universe that being like, I am a classic but different kind of person. And that to me doesn't speak as much about fashion as it does.
Yeah, at the same time, the dandyism trend is like really old news at this point.
You love dandyism. I know this.
But it even was gone from pop culture for the most part, prior to COVID, and now it has been absolutely decimated.
Yeah.
But even prior to that, though, when people were wearing fedoras, they were easily mocked. It became a thing. Like, you're a men's rights activist. It was like the fedora guys. That was kind of the, I would say, public perception of hats as you're using. We're not talking about baseball caps here.
No.
Like, when's the last time you ran into someone in a fedora who hasn't been wearing that hat for 20 years? There are certain people who are just, they wear that hat and that's their look and they've gone with it. But people adopting fedoras, I feel like that sort of stopped post like 2011 or something.
There was a very buzzy restaurant that opened up near here. I still want to try if they can survive the Rona restrictions, but it was something people were talking about. Like, let's go check out this place.
Which place is this? Come on, let the listeners know.
I forgot the name, but they served. I don't even want to because what I'm going to say is I Googled who the chef was, and it was a nightlife guy that me and you both know that used to roll around in a pork pie hat. And he seemed like a nice dude. Very, going for the West Side Story thing. Fine, whatever. Cuffed pants, cuffed jeans. I'm down, whatever. But like a tiny pork pie hat that like sat on his head. You know what I mean? It was a little too small.
Right. You're talking about our friend Adebisi from Oz.
Yeah. I never watched Oz. Should I?
You've watched everything else. It's time for the rewatch.
I know. I'm gonna get there. But no one on The Sopranos wears a hat, and that show is amazing. Done. Case closed.
I was hoping you would bring in more kinds of hats. We're like, if someone comes in with a fez, then you know this. Like, they've got a pillbox hat.
All right, let's do this. A fez is like a wacky nerd. That's fine, but someone who probably would bristle at conventional, normal, that kind of problematic. Not problematic. That probably like that edgy nerd. It's edgy nerd, right? Like the other nerds are like, whoa, he's cool. And then a pork pie hat is like kind of a fan of the yesteryear, being like times were just no one was shouting over beats, people were singing to songs, that kind of thing. Doo-wop.
Like if you have a pork pie hat, you probably like a good Manhattan.
Yep. I do not watch Peaky Blinders, even though I've tried a zillion times. There's just a lot of hattage going on, man. What about a cowboy hat?
When's the last time you saw someone in a cowboy hat?
I have a good buddy who grew up in Texas on a farm, and he wore a baseball hat because he hated cowboy hats so much. And then he got skin cancer on the top of his ears. And he was like, that's why they wear cowboy hats. He's fine.
Wow, that is a harrowing tale. Far more harrowing than I expected when you started it.
Yeah, it took that turn, right?
It did. Well, look, at any rate, I'm glad to hear that you've escaped shower posse, their clutches, and now you've biohacked yourself into a truly supreme being. And fortunately, thanks to the quick thinking of Governor Cuomo, there are even less opportunities for you to shower and leave the house.
What?
As of today, Monday, indoor dining has been banned in New York City.
Finally.
How many indoor meals did you go out and have yesterday?
All of them. I had all of them. It was one continuous meal. It was like, an open meal. But
started at 9 a.m.,
Yeah.
4 breakfasts, lunch, 3 of them, 9 dinners, just place to place, going inside, lavish treatment, enough indoor dining to last until April.
yeah. I'm sure, I mean, restaurants are getting pummeled, and it's insane what they're having to go through. But a lot of restaurants I see that I can afford, like, their indoor spaces are used for like storage now. They're just like kind of concentrating on outside. And I talked to one of our buddies about it, and he was just like, fine, just tell me what to do, because no information is like driving me insane. It's like, you can do this, maybe you can't, maybe like this. He's like, if more restrictions go down, then the possibility of legislation happening goes up. So he's just like, I'm not making money on any of this. Like, I cannot survive on indoor dining and outdoor dining. I need legislative help.
Yeah, I mean, we're all aware of the perils of indoor dining because of how COVID works. That the aerosol component is present indoors and is not outdoors. There are other risks wherever, of course, but that is the one that is unique to people not wearing masks, especially socializing, talking, eating, yelling, shouting, singing. Yes, we know all that. I am also curious, though, to know what the numbers are about transmission, infection rates in New York City as they applied to indoor dining. Because Cuomo had a vested interest in saying indoor dining wasn't a big cause of spread because, he allowed it. But also, if that's what the numbers show, then what are we doing exactly?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think indoor dining was very popular.
I don't think so.
The amount of people in New York out of the full population that were just eating in restaurants was pretty fucking low.
Yeah. And outdoor dining isn't even that popular. Sure, so some restaurants are crushing it, but it's not working.
Well, that's what I mean, right? Like, if the numbers say that indoor dining isn't driving infection rates and it's not that popular, then, like, I don't know. I get the hazards, and I was never even really in favor of them opening it up again. But seeing it, in action, you would go into places and there'd be like 2 people. I only ate inside like a handful of times, not many, and I didn't enjoy it. But I think I'm falling in line with the consensus. Most people avoided it. So a lot of times you go into a place, it'd be like one person, and you'd get your food and leave. But I don't know. I just don't think the numbers, at least according to Cuomo, showed that it was really pushing the COVID cases in New York City, especially in terms of transmission between staff and customers. Like, there was a spike involved with the restaurants, but I think it was mostly due to adding more staff and having more people in enclosed spaces in the kitchen. And that's why you saw a boost in the rates in those communities that were already hit hard, where you had a lot of service industry workers like, Elmhurst, Jackson Heights, Corona in Queens, because you have, multiple people living in the same dwelling. You have multi-generational homes. That same community that was vulnerable this entire time has remained vulnerable. So I don't know. I have mixed feelings about its closure only because I just don't know if it was a big deal or not.
Yeah, I'm kind of relieved. Everyone should be relieved with this vaccine news, but I'm kind of relieved in the way that we're not looking at microstats anymore. Like, where do essential workers work and where do they live and all this, that's important. But the bigger idea and the bigger frustration I have is like an overall thing. And finally, we have overall issues to deal with now that I think will impact everything in a greater way than like shutting down, letting indoor dining happen, maybe limiting it, shutting it. All these are micro adjustments waiting for the big one, and we're about to see the delivery of the big one in action soon, right?
Yeah, no, that's true. That's true, and I get it. And seeing the light at the end of the tunnel can adjust your thinking in the short term as well, and say, well, you know what, just shut that down, get the rates as low as possible, and then the vaccine will come and we'll take it from there. I get that. It's just odd to me what is able to stay open and what isn't. And it seems like this decisions that are supposedly made on science have kind of abandoned it. And maybe that's the right move at this point, but it is a little bit bewildering when you look at the rates in New York City. I mean, Staten Island is just out of control. Some neighborhoods in Brooklyn are out of control that are heavily religious. You have the neighborhoods where you have vulnerable service industry people, and then other places the rates are the same as they were before. It's just very difficult to come up with a comprehensive policy to take all these into account. We kind of did the New York City vibe check last week. I don't even really know what the situation is. Is New York infested with COVID right now, or is it pretty much the same as it was in August, depending on where you are? I've lost the thread.
Yeah, the misinformation is the crime here, and not telling us what we need to know as people who are at risk is like the mishandling of this whole thing. And I think we're seeing it more and more. It's not getting better. It's just like changing. And my frustration is the lack of transparency. It's just like, hey guys, we don't have enough of this, but we can do this. Hey guys, we don't have enough resources, or we can't handle this right now. It's just we got no information, and we were left to our own defenses, and when left to our own defenses, it's, do you watch the games, bro? Or, Basketball Reference subscriber,
Right. I just feel such sympathy for people who are in the restaurant industry or in the bar industry, because these decisions seem arbitrary. Okay, so over the summer, we were able to have outdoor dining until 11, but now it's 10. Why? Yeah. That doesn't make any sense. So it's just an hour earlier. You just can't make money for an hour at night like you could before. Is it just the optics of having people around on the street having beers that politicians want to avoid? I just don't even understand any of the reasoning behind it. And I mean, look, I know as a fact, it's not based on science. It's not. These are just decisions that people are making as arbitrarily as they come off.
I mean, when I hear people on TV cast doubt on the plight of this whole industry that will be decimated when this is done. It is already decimated. I'm like, just imagine your friend or your wife, partner, and I hate to do this, but it's like the city and the government is gaslighting a whole sector of our workforce. And it's just like, dinner last night was great. Like, what would you like for dinner tonight? It's like, I don't eat dinner anymore. It's like, what? But didn't you say you love dinner? It's just like, you're nuts. I don't have dinner. And it's just like, am I going crazy? Or are you just giving me completely different stories every time?
It's so infuriating to look at Australia or Taiwan, places, just New Zealand, going and living like normal. Restaurants are open. Clubs are open. Yeah. They're doing concerts outside. No one wears masks. They did it. Yeah. They figured it out. Of course, there are other variables.
Europe did not figure it out.
They didn't. The severity of the crackdowns and contact tracing, being on an island, being able to isolate yourself from other countries. Mm-hmm. But it is infuriating to see other places got it right, while people we know and care about are still getting sick. People are losing their businesses. People are out of work. And it's just all so avoidable.
It was avoidable, or it was mitigatable, and it didn't have to be this bad. Of course, you're not going to put a lock on it like Taiwan. That was just an abnormal, amazing performance on their part. But
Australia did it. Fucking Australians.
Yeah, they're doing a bubble between New Zealand and Australia now where you can travel back and forth, which is pretty interesting. Aaron Bain season. But I think I'm really greatly disappointed and disheartened by the lack of a plan, man. It's just like it's demoralizing a little bit.
And people will knock house partiers, street beers, but it's the politicians. It's the politicians who did this. It is not the Thanksgiving gatherers. It's not the people who are unwilling to give up Christmas. That's all just punching down. It's not the dipshits in Staten Island. It's the politicians. That's who caused this entire problem, and is still causing this problem.
And it becomes muddy because if you know somebody who's going to have a party for Christmas, I'm like, I support that, but just be careful because you could get sick because we don't know what we're doing. And I think, vibe-wise and morally, you should do it because you're human. Take all the precautions that you know to take, but you're still running a risk, so just know that.
Well, I think you're on your own, guys, as far as the government's concerned.
Yeah.
Keep yourself safe. Keep other people safe. That's the right thing to do.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to scream at you as if you are the cause of our 300,000 deaths, that it's the people who let other people down. No, it's our government, man. It's our government.
In March, I was really into the idea of peer pressure and us informing each other about what to do and how shaming has a role in our society. But now we're in December and I'm like, oh, the fucking government. We were buying time for the government and we were looking at them and they were like, oh, we're not doing anything. It's like, we're buying time for you to do something to help us. And they weren't.
Well, let's get a little more optimistic here. The vaccine trucks are rolling, my guy.
I'm excited. I'm excited.
They're cruising like Optimus Prime, full of vaccines, spreading across the nation. I think New York State, we got ourselves 170,000 vaccines for 25 million people.
I was thinking Optimus Prime. Wouldn't it be cool if Michael Bay named his kid Lil Bay? So the name would be Lil Baby, Artist of the Year, James Harden friend. Those are the important things to think about.
I've changed my mind about the vaccine. I think they should just go to cops. All the first vaccines go to politicians and cops so they can keep us safe.
It was so confusing because Trump was like, nah, the White House shouldn't get this. I'm like, okay, what? Is he just saying he is Superman and everyone else can die? I don't understand any logic other than it should probably go to frontline workers first, right? And whatever
should definitely not go to politicians first.
But then frontline workers
get it last. Real talk. Politicians, you get it last. You are last in line.
I don't know. Having our legislative wing of our society all die is not a great solution. But there is no great solution here. There is nothing cool about this discussion.
Depends on who you ask.
Right. But then
is all of our legislative body becoming infirm? Would that be bad?
Yeah. In a time where we need a plan, so we don't want to re-elect people now, right? There's no good way to talk about this idea of who gets it first other than I should get it last because I don't go outside.
Cops get it first.
I think people who have to be outside should get it first, and people who make decisions for other people, they should probably get it, man.
I think it has to go to medical workers first. That's it.
100. I think people who are in contact helping other people should get this. But I've seen the the goalposts of front line changed so much that I love it. Pretty soon it's going to be like, well, is Seth Curry front line or is it going to be Danny Green front line?
This was your agenda trying to give it to the NBA players first last pod.
I don't think that's a bad idea either because I think people, there are certain people that if anything bad happened to them, it is an awful thing to see. And like,
What about movie stars? Should they get it first too?
There's no way to have this conversation good, but Rock Hudson changed the entire arc of what AIDS research became, right? And his death,
but that was because Ronald Reagan was a homophobic piece of shit.
Dude, what are we dealing with now? Right? Like, this is exactly what we're dealing with.
Trump's brother may have died of COVID. His friends died. All he said was, I don't want to go out like them.
Like, you know, the complaint of deniers is like, do you know anybody who died? Everyone got better. It's just the flu. Right. They helicopter people to medical research facilities when you have the flu. But like, if their favorite dude died, I don't know who that may be, Blake Shelton or something, that is a seismic change in the perception of society.
So you want them to die then, is what you're saying. So you're saying stars should not get the vaccine because if they die, it will raise awareness to the graveness of COVID. I'm with you on that.
Herman Cain dying, I thought was going to change something, and it didn't. But Herman Cain dying was so abstract and surreal to me that I was like, we have to fucking do this. Guy just ran for president. Like,
quote, just let me know, do you want the celebs to die or not?
I mean,
no. You're giving me both sides here. One is give the celebs the vaccine first, and the other is let the celebs die so that we take this thing seriously. Where do you actually fall?
I don't think the celebs should die. I think, well, who would you give it to at first? If you had two
essential workers, I would give it.
And then after that, then who?
I would give it to people who are old, and then I would give it to people who say work in the service industry.
Keep on going down the list. After the service industry, then who? Because there's not enough for everybody.
Then I would just keep going by like medical risk. And if that means that
based on what criteria,
obese people get it first, I'd be like, fine.
But what about mental illness and stuff? Like, this gets really
mental illness, no, because we're literally talking about a physical virus. Like, just because you have depression doesn't mean you should get the vaccine.
I think you should, because that the behavior dictates a lot of different outcomes. If you're at risk mentally, you're at risk physically, I think.
I mean, I'm just not sure how you'd quantify that in the chart. I mean, you saw the New York Times thing, right, where you put in your variables?
Yeah, that was just clickbait. But yeah,
I did it,
based
and
off
I
of
did
stuff.
it, and I'm second.
Why? Because of beer and tacos?
Looks like I'm number two. Number two.
Because of brothy tacos?
I think it was like 2.5 million ahead of me in Brooklyn alone.
Yeah, I mean, I should not get it for sure, but I don't want the unenviable task of doling this out because I just want people I'd like to get it, to be honest. And I like frontline workers, and I like my politicians, and I like my friends. So I would be the last person to ask, right?
So one, celebs.
I don't think that's... I mean, it's cooler to mock politicians and celebs than not to, right? Like, that is a move. That's a pork pie hat, right? Because it is a projection of virtue that I don't think is...
The idea that celebs should get it first is insane, Quo. I love you, man. It is an insane idea that the celebs should get it first. The rich and famous should make sure to get the vaccines before other people.
But I'm looking at you with the pork pie hat on.
They should be treated no differently whatsoever.
I mostly agree with that too, but you have that pork pie hat on, and I'm saying, like, it is not because the pork pie hat is not a hat. It's a hat that functions.
You're in Hollywood, walking around with your pork pie hat on, giving the tour. You're on the top of the bus, being a celeb who lives there. Give them a vaccine.
You're on Cookies Hoops, and you have a cowboy hat on, and I'm like, valid, Ben, but the cowboy hat is telling me something. But I think it's too easy to say the people I think don't deserve what they have don't deserve this vaccine.
Who's saying that? I'm saying that being notable being wealthy should not entitle
not
you.
being wealthy.
Being wealthy and being notable should get you the vaccine first. That's cool. You showed up wearing a fez.
I mean,
you're wearing a fez right now.
You're steamrolling this a bit, but my point is like Rock Hudson kind of was an important thing.
But you wanted him to die so he could bring attention to AIDS.
But it's like the importance of this action. I mean, you're laughing through it with the pork pie hat on, but like
you're wearing a fez and you're trying to tell me that celebs should die to raise awarenesses, and yet you want to give them vaccines.
I'm not saying that. And I know this is funny, but what I'm saying is this is an unenviable task that if like all the basketball players got some sort of treatment that we didn't get, right? Like in the bubble, they got through their company, got tests, immediate rapid tests. We didn't get those.
They were able to purchase
I had
them.
no objections with that. I was just like, that sucks that someone has to get it, but right, I understand why they got it. I understand the reality. I'm not naive, right? To say like it should be even throughout, I'm like, that makes sense in a theory, but I'm not naive to think that's true.
It makes sense in a moral aspect.
Course, but morally, like capitalism isn't moral. But
well, just to be clear, if we're saying that money and fame and wealth and connections should play a role in vaccines,
I'm not saying that either. But
I mean, that's what you are saying, right?
Well,
I'm saying it should literally be based on risk. That's it. It's risk of your profession. It's risk of your existing health. It's risk of your age. It's risk of your potential exposure. All those kind of things. It's literally a math thing. Where do you fit on this risk mitigation? Do you have pre-existing conditions? Are you old? Blah 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 blah.
What if your risk is attached to money, fame, and power, like basketball players, because they were in high risk because they were going to start the league again, and I'm like, ooh, they should probably get tested because they're in a high risk bubble.
But they're not in the high risk bubble because
they got tested. They figured it out, right? So it became low risk. So I don't know where the goalposts are here.
I'm saying the vaccine is different from just getting tested, in my opinion. I think the vaccine has to be done on a strict way that once you start bringing in wealth and power and connections, it becomes exceptionally gross and evil.
Yeah, I'm not saying that either because I think, like when the NBA players create a safe situation, they can hold off getting a vaccine as long as they get tested and as long as they have protocols and money behind it and they can fly to places and stay there and are incentivized to stay there. But that is also kind of like we didn't have that 3 months ago, and we were arguing about that. Now that we have a vaccine, that seems more palatable morally to us, and now that we have an even better solution than a test, which is a cure, it kind of is sounding like we're operating on the same debatable discussions as we were 4 months ago.
Maybe, but to this point, there has not been a market for we'll pay you extra for these vaccines. And once you get into that, then it gets really gross. And that's all I'm arguing against. Because
I don't think you should be able to buy one.
When the test, right, and that's all I'm saying. When the testing was occurring and the NBA was willing to just spend more money than anyone else to get those tests, that was because it was not a unified state-led effort to get testing to people. These were like privately owned. Yeah. So Pfizer taking a section of their vaccine and saying, oh, you'll give us more money, NBA, we'll give them to you. Right. That to me defeats like the entire purpose of this societally. And would I be surprised if it happened? Of course not.
No.
But I mean, it is repulsive if it becomes anything other than need. And we already know it's going to happen.
And I agree with that. And maybe what I'm saying is like, let's take the microcosm of the NBA. Let's say you guys are not going to get the vaccine, which is fair. But Greg Popovich and Pat Riley will because they're at risk. I think it's easy to say it's like, well, they can just afford it. I'm like, no, they're literally rich, famous, and at risk because they're older, right? Or someone with a pre-existing condition, like, the young man who just like collapsed on the kid who just collapsed on the basketball court, like give it to him. It's like, well, he's an athlete. Why does he get it before I do? I'm like, because he's at risk and we don't know. Yes, you can get it too. Like, what's your case? Like, this gets into what you're annoyed at.
Well, I just think it has to be equal. This is given out by the state. This is, that's how this is being distributed. It's not by Pfizer saying, okay, throw me some money, individual organization, at least at this point. So, to me, it's like you just have to use the same equation for everybody. That's how it's fair. Whether you end up putting people into different brackets and different pools and then they get called according to lottery, I don't know. This obviously is going to be a long and fraught process.
This is going to be a nightmare, and we just have to stay put and I am not going to leave my house as much or shower. But I think this is a situation that I'm glad I'm not responsible for, because I think Greg Popovich should get a vaccine. I think he should get a vaccine because he's old. 75 years old.
That's what I mean. And I agree. But I also think a 75-year-old who's homeless should get one.
Oh, I agree with that too.
I just don't put Greg Popovich as a successful, respected guy higher on the vaccine list than any other 75-year-old with the same, health conditions.
And I think it's tastier to be like, oh, I'm just favoring rich people. But I'm not. What I'm saying is some people at risk just happen to be rich. Bill Gates doesn't need this vaccine monetarily, but he's old.
I just don't care about people's notoriety and wealth. They should get it based on that criteria that New York Times clickbaity thing did, which was, what is your job? Do you have pre-existing health conditions? Are you immunocompromised? What is your age? What is your weight? What is your zip code? And figure it out like that.
I mean, the original question was, do I think rich and famous people should get this? And I think, if they're at risk, they should absolutely get it.
Okay, fine. We can agree on that. One thing before we get to basketball, it's on the same topic, which is kind of interesting. Let's not go too far into it because we got hoops to talk about. The NBA has returned after all. But once vaccines are widely in circulation, I think you'll get a situation where people will have vaccination cards. In this day and age, I'm sure there'll be apps and they'll be digital. But this happened in the past. People got inoculated against yellow fever, and they had what they call a yellow card. This is, ages prior, well before the NBA started in 1996. Do you think we'll see this nationally where, say, Delta Airlines won't let you fly without a vaccination card, or the Knicks won't let you come and watch, an exhibition game between the Knicks and another relegated team without flashing your vaccination app?
I think that it is on the table as an idea, and I know a lot of big companies are trying to be the ones to corner the market if it becomes a reality. And I know it is a better idea scientifically to do this, but I just think it's kind of like an invasion of privacy, and we can't go there ever as a society. I was thinking about this in basketball terms the other day, James Harden rolls around and hangs out with famous rappers. And is he more distracted from the game as Gordon Hayward, who has 4 kids? Will there eventually be a stipulation in a contract that's being you can only have 2 kids? I'm well, that just seems like a step too far. It's right, but it makes sense. And it got me thinking about what the idea of that is. It's well, you can't really have dinner because you don't have this yellow card. And I'm I'm not willing to go there as a society yet.
I mean, I think you absolutely should. It does raise questions about access to the vaccine, for starters, and where that could go down the line.
And it trusts data, which is always noisy.
Well, sure. I'm mostly thinking about the fact that we don't have a healthcare system that is equitable to all. So if you start making these kind of criteria, maybe it starts eliminating people who don't have good health insurance, people who don't have access to health insurance, people who can't afford certain things. But in the case of coronavirus, though, I also am very much of the mind that that seems fair. It seems fair. You want to come in and watch this basketball game in person? Show me your fucking app, dude. You don't want to? You can't come in. That's okay. We're taking people's temperature when they walk to a spot, no matter how effective that is. We're making people wear masks to go in stores. I think saying, look, we can reopen movie theaters. You just have to have been vaccinated to walk in. To me, that's fine. And if it does have a trickle-down effect of pressuring people who are otherwise anti-vax or on the edge into getting vaccinated just to kind of re-enter those social environments, I don't see that as a bad thing. But again, it's complicated, but I don't think you can say you can just not get vaccinated and just roll around and like go into places. I don't know. I think you have to at least say, if we're going to go back to normalcy and riding on planes and stuff without masks, you're just going to have to show us your card.
I get that logic, and I think it's an interesting beginning of like a sci-fi movie, and the movie would unfold with a ton of prejudice and a ton of classism, right? It is almost an L. Ron Hubbard book, because it's like, well, I couldn't get the vaccine because I'm poor, like we said before. Like, poor people are going to be the last in line again. And I think if you make people like use your cashless establishments is classist, right? And classism is racism. And if a place is like, we don't take cash here, it's like, oh, so you have to have a bank account. I think you're going to run into prejudice in a police state like that.
I'm with you on all that. And I firmly believe that places should not be allowed to be cashless.
Not yet. We haven't figured this out.
And, I'm with you on that. And 100%. And I don't like the fact that everyone has to have Metro cards and you can't just use a token. There are a lot of things about that really do bother me.
Right.
But on the other hand, with seeing how poorly we've handled coronavirus, I'm like, yo, you want to create your own little society over there where people aren't vaccinated? You want to create your own non-vax restaurants? Like, all right, go off. I want to go back to living normally. I want to go back to not wearing masks everywhere. I want to go back to eating inside. I want to go back to socializing with my friends. And if getting vaccinated and getting a little I voted thing, but for an injection, is what that takes, I'm with it.
Yeah. I think I love that idea, and I think that's a fast track to getting back to somewhere, but I think we've gone too far and we're not unified enough. So as a concept, yes. In reality, I hate it. It is just not going to work. And
like, if you're not willing to get a vaccination when it first comes out and you're worried about it and you're concerned, you don't think it's safe because instead of taking 1.5 years, it took 9 months. I get it. But if you're someone who's like, I just don't believe in vaccinations, like, fuck you. Like, just fuck off. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you can't come on a plane. No.
Yeah.
Like, it's okay if you don't want to get vaccinated, but like, you can't go around people who are trying to do the right thing in this situation. Like, fuck off.
It's a tough discussion. Like, I hear anti-vaxxers as a concept, but I'm just like, you just have to do it because
like,
it's
you know
okay.
why polio isn't here?
Right.
You know how we beat polio?
I know. I mean,
vaccines. Like, it's like the internet is part of this. Although I'm sure there were
for sure,
polio vaccine people back then, but we got rid of polio because of vaccines. That's it. Smallpox, all these things that we got rid of because of vaccines that are coming back because cretins are online too much.
And I think, and not all vaccines are created equal, and the anti-vax community points to ones that maybe like aren't as great as others. As we're seeing with these COVID vaccines, there's like 6 of them that do different things that are created from different starting points. So it's like, it's very hard to wrap your head around. It's like the COVID vaccine big board, right? It's just like, well, I'll just pick one of them.
The COVID big board, yes.
Yeah. There's one LaMelo Ball vaccine, and then there's a bunch of Obi Toppin vaccines, you know? And they both work, but they work differently depending on, you know, who made them. And it is a whole world out there, and to have people who care about their families and jobs and, you know, making sure they can pay rent, to think about different kinds of vaccines is like very challenging.
Yeah, I'm not saying every vaccine is great, but if you're going to put some sort of trust in the FDA, again, I understand skepticism towards these things.
People hate the FDA.
Right, but at some point, it just can't be I'm not doing it, but I'm going to go back to living normally. Just can't allow that. You can't have that and have this work. It just doesn't operate that way. You can't have people with COVID sitting around in sports arenas because the vaccine's not going to work for everybody. They will still get some people sick, and that's not
Asians
fair.
and black people are unproven the success rate. I think it's like a full 10% lower for Asians or people of color, which is
Weird.
Yeah, it's
Weird how
surprising.
Weird how tech companies, that always seems to happen, right?
It's like we didn't really test that population. I'm like, right?
It's so weird how our facial identification technology just keeps saying that all black people look the same. No. Weird how your brown hands don't make the water turn on in the bathroom in front of a sensor. Very strange.
Weird. All Asians are biohackers. I think like it. I am, but
I can't believe you've biohacked.
I am. Past tense. I am currently sitting here as a living, breathing biohacker.
No, I like that you have been biohacked. I mean, like this is apex quo.
Oh, it's cool. It's definitely it's pretty awesome. I'm cooler than I've ever been without the aid of a hat. But I don't know. Yeah. I think this COVID is generous in the way that, and hear me out on this, it could have been so much more deadly. And it is on a scale from 1 to 10 of harm, a 10. But when Dr. Fauci says in the fall, if 75% of people, if we're leaving a quarter of our country unvaccinated, we might be able to get to the idea of what people think herd immunity is. And to me, that is like optimal. And I think this virus is forgiving to us in that it lets us see that end.
Right, just because the fatality rates are lower than, say, the Spanish flu or something like that.
Yeah, stuff like this is, it's 10 out of 10 bad, but we mismanaged it. If we managed it well, we could have mitigated it. A lot of other diseases that I've heard about are not this forgivable. Well
said. Speaking of mismanagement, Knicks have played 2 preseason games.
Wow. Wow, shots fired.
Basketball's back. Obi Toppin is the new star of the new prince of the city. How are you feeling about the New York Knicks?
I love this team. I love this team anyway, but this group of young rapscallions is a joy. They're going to lose so many games, and I'm going to be glued to my television set.
I don't want to hash up the Knicks plan because you've come around on it, and I still think it's pretty goofy. But I will say, I watched most of the Knicks' first game, missed the second one. Yeah. Did not do a rewatch because I'm not a Knicks day one like you are.
Love that rewatch.
I gotta say, man, 48 minutes of Nerlens or Mitch, I'm in. I'm in on that.
It is
Get to
sloppy.
Watch 2 of my favorite players, defensive freaks, who don't always put everything else together for a full game. Marvelous.
They are fun, man. And those 2 players you mentioned, they kind of are chaos dudes, and it doesn't look pretty. They're deflecting shots. Like, people are just scrambling for balls. Like, it looks sloppy, but it is their game, and I love it. And, like, the first time you watch a game, it's for the pure exhilaration of the Knicks. It's just thrilling. And the second time, you kind of get into what's happening because you know what's the result is. And those 2 guys are legitimately fun and kind of great. And Obi Toppin is exactly who he's advertised. I've talked myself into him. He is kind of lost out there, but he has offensive sensibility that will get buckets. RJ Barrett is not good.
He had a good game last night.
Yeah, he scored a bunch, right? But, all this chatter, we've seen a handful of games. We haven't seen all the teams play, but the players people are most excited about are just scoring a lot.
Yeah, I mean, this is natural, right? I mean, we're just trying to find something interesting to talk about.
Fascinating.
A guy goes 7 of 12 shooting versus 4 of 12, and like, this guy's special. He's different. He's a walking bucket.
Yeah.
Like, he's got that ratchet.
Yeah.
But before we move on to the actual NBA, are you already feeling a little buyer's remorse? Not that you made the purchase on Obi Toppin, but seeing how your man Halliburton has looked in Sacramento. Because your point about the guys have scored well, what do we know about it? He's kind of doing what you thought he would do. Assists, rebounds, steals, a little bit of scoring. Out of everyone so far, his stat line was kind of tasty.
Yo, it popped, right? And I don't get anything I want with the Knicks, and I didn't get Halliburton, which is...
Sorry I did this to you, but I just saw Halliburton going off, and I was like, ooh, whoa, that's gotta sting.
I was watching it.
I'm going to bring that up in 8 hours.
I'm going to always think about Halliburton as the one that got away, but he was the one to take, and he has looked every bit as good as advertised. He's not lightning quick, and I think I mentioned this on Twitter, but I'll just say it really quick. I think Leon Rose, giving him the most benefit of the doubt, was maybe like he has his eyes on these 2-star point guards in 2021, and Obi's his guy. So he's like, I want to take my guy now, the power forward, the David Lee Light, to score buckets, and then next year go all in on the star point guard. Because Halliburton is not a star. Killian Hayes is not a star. But Halliburton is a very, very excellent player. And anytime the scouting reports always mention the word genius, you got to think about that guy.
I just like guys who do stuff. I think, LaMelo Ball had some beautiful passes, and that's all I want to see out of him. I think he'll struggle to score.
Oh, I loved his debut. Oof.
Same. Lonzo struggles to score. And I'm not sure he'll ever be an efficient volume scorer at all. No. And LaMelo may not be either. But man, I really do enjoy players who are basketball geniuses. Yeah. Guys who see the floor and make plays with pre-recognition that see things developing before it happens and are not responsive to it. And it's beautiful to watch. And I think there is a benefit to that, obviously, that can even supersede being able to score, on a high level.
Yeah, and it's the combination of precog stuff. Shout out to Minority Report, but also being able to influence your teammates into them being different players. And we always talk about the idea of a point guard or a certain player making his teammates better. But when you have Ben Simmons or a Ball on your team, shout out to LiAngelo. I don't know his game that well, but
he was cut yesterday.
There you go. Yeah, he doesn't have the talent as the other two kids do, because they kind of like watching the Hornets run with LaMelo. It felt like they were kind of giving him an opportunity to see something in the future, and it's cutting, it's where they stand, it's seeing space on the court from a point guard influencing your other players seeing the space better themselves.
As someone whose basketball experience mirrors that of NBA players.
Cool.
Almost identically, eerily so. I will say that playing with an exceptional passer does give you this jolt of both excitement and nervousness in some ways.
Yeah, totally. Totally.
Where you just are on point, because that ball might be coming at you unexpectedly, and it might just bounce off your face if you're not paying attention. Like you don't necessarily know right away where it's coming from, but you know that if you cut, you'll be rewarded. If you run the court specifically, you will be rewarded. You see that guy get the ball, you're busting your ass to get down the court and get into the play in a way that you don't if, say, it's Zach LaVine.
Yeah.
Good player. But if Zach LaVine has the ball and is pushing the ball up the court, I don't think you're saying, I need to get down there, because if I do, I'm going to score easy too.
Yeah.
And I can do that 4 times a game and add 8 points that are easy. Yeah. It's going to make me look like a star. I'm going to make millions of dollars because this guy will feed me the ball if I bust my ass to get down there and just take it. There are free points to be had when you play with these guys. Yeah. And there is like an awareness. It's like an intensity of space and hustle that I think, from my own experience playing with guys who are excellent passers, and you will be rewarded, it really does incentivize playing harder and playing smarter.
Yeah. I'm definitely playing smarter. I think when the term genius gets thrown around with a player like Halliburton, I kind of, in my mind, think about psychiatry. And he's kind of like a therapist on the court. And I hear it a lot when I watch games, and we've always heard this. It's like when a big man does a good thing defensively, sometimes the announcers will say, reward him on the opposite end of the court. And I think basketball geniuses recognize that dynamic in real time on the court, and like you said, it incentivizes that big man to maybe rim run faster or do that all the time. I'm like, oh, he's a mini therapist. He's reading the desires and emotions of his teammates and responding and rewarding them and influencing them moving forward.
Yeah, it's that, but it can also be for every position, right? When you know you have an apex passer who's pushing the ball up the court, you're trying to run up there and even spot up for a three. You know, and you're right. It's that same idea, but I think in the modern game, it extends beyond just having your, you know, lumpy center, like, you know, galumph his way down the court to get a trailer dunk. It's everybody.
Yeah.
Get out there and run wide, you know. Like when people run breaks, you know, you're supposed to basically run really wide so the defenders can't pick up other guys. And now that means basically running maybe to a corner three, running to above the break three. And when you see someone like LaMelo out there, you're getting to those spots because you practice this. Yeah. And he knows where you're going to be. You know those players where you see a point guard kind of curl around the baseline, get up in the air, and seemingly just throw the ball to nowhere? Russell Westbrook did this a lot. But he knows where his guy's going to be. He knows there's going to be a shooter at that spot. Yes. He doesn't have to see him. You know, and it's that same way when you're with someone who has vision and unselfishness that, like, get to your spots and you're going to get a great look.
Yeah, and this is like, it makes me think of a front office. Like, let's say the Sixers unload someone like Zaire Smith. I'm like, well, I don't quite understand that, but Daryl Morey's in charge, so there's a reason. If you're running to a basket and your point guard you perceive as like a genius, a generous, a philanthropic basketball player, and you don't get the ball, you can live with it, right? Because he sees you. And like, it's what quarterbacking or whatever sports cliche you want to throw out there, it's like, it's maybe on the way back to defense, he'd be like, I saw you, next time, buddy, but like good cut to the rim. I think that talent is so valuable and so hard to replace and get, that when a player like Halliburton or LaMelo Ball is on the board, you should just take them.
Yeah, and, you know, we can talk more about the Sixers and Simmons and their trade ideas if we want to. That has been overly discussed, but we're never opposed to doing some over discussion. But there was a graphic I saw yesterday that was really interesting, and it showed where assists for threes generated the highest bounces up and the highest declines in expected field goal percentage for those shots. Does that make sense? And it showed where those passes came from. And it comes from being in the paint. You know, it's unique that being in the center of the paint, like right in the middle of the lane, and kicking the ball out to three-point shooters, people shot 18% higher on three-pointers from those positions than you would expect, which is really crazy, right? And it makes sense because this is what we're talking about. When someone who has that ability to get into the lane and draw defenders has the ability to also kick the ball out to somebody who's already spotted up and in their positions, they're rewarded for it, and they play better. They don't have to run to a spot, catch it on the fly, turn and shoot. They don't have to angle their body. They're just standing there waiting for their guy because they know the ball's going to come. They're expecting it. They're prepared. And that was one of my grievances with Josh Richardson. He would never spot up. He would never be there with his knees bent and his palms up, showing that he was ready to catch the ball and let it fly. He would be ambling around while Joel Embiid was posting up. And like, these are just things that you have to have your guys believe. There have to be rules. You have to be ready to shoot. You have to be ready to let it go. You have to be in the right spot. And I do think those apex distributors like LeBron, like Draymond Green, like Ben Simmons, you know, like Jokic, they encourage players to utilize the necessary rules in their own benefit.
And there's less than 10 of those guys in the league. Around 10, right?
I was watching Paige Brecker's highlights. Ooh, she is a basketball genius. It's awesome. It's awesome. Clear. And Doncic and Harden. Like, they're all in this discussion.
Harden, for sure. Yeah.
As you said, there's 10 of them.
Yeah.
But Paige Brecker's is one. No, absolutely no question.
Amazing.
Like, she makes those, like, skip passes for threes.
Yeah.
There's, you can tell she's got it. And it's wild to see, whatever she is, 19-year-old girl, not to make it about gender, but to see a 19-year-old girl playing in a way that there are only like 10 dudes in the entire NBA can play. Like, she has that spatial, intellectual, timing, precog. She has all that stuff. It's really cool.
Yeah, Subert has that too, right? Not to talk about the WNBA. When are they starting again? Anyway.
I just wish that we could go to the games, because I really wanted to start going to more WNBA games, Mystics, but they were all in Westchester.
Oh, I thought they were moving. I thought the Liberty was moving to Barclays.
They're going to. I'm sorry, not the Mystics. Sorry. Yeah, the Liberty they were playing in New York, but they're the New York Liberty, but they played in Westchester.
Oh, Sabrina. Yeah, I want to go. Let's go. When we can go.
Yeah, I was really excited to watch them this year.
Yeah. But yeah, speaking of basketball geniuses too.
More basketball geniuses.
There's been some Simmons Harden chatter on the feed. What's up with that?
I'm not sure why this conversation keeps happening involving Ben Simmons. And he's always somehow on the trade block. Don't see a lot of talk from Devin Booker being traded for Harden, or Luka Doncic, who's played 1 year more than Ben Simmons. Why isn't it Doncic for Harden? That would seem to make sense for everybody, right? Doncic for Harden. Jayson Tatum, don't hear it, even though the Celtics' best player is 31 years old. Like, what is their window exactly? Kemba is 31.
With bad knees.
But, they're win now. Go get Harden.
Yeah. I don't want that. He would be a good addition on any team. But
100%. You don't see Karl Anthony Towns for James Harden. It's just Simmons. And it's interesting because we've seen a 2-week carpet bombing by the Boston-based media, desperate to get the Sixers to trade Ben Simmons for James Harden. And their proposals are amazing, because it's always, and they should add in more draft picks and young guys. Do whatever it takes. Just keep adding up. Trade your whole team for James Harden, because,
you guys are never going to win unless you don't mortgage everything for James Harden.
Everything. Just give it all up. Everything you have for James Harden, who's 31 years old.
And green hats, man. Never trust a green hat.
But it's also very interesting to watch Sixers Nation dutifully fall in line after the Boston media has sounded their bagpipes for a couple of weeks. It happens every time. Yeah, I think I get it though, right? Because if you're a Sixers blogger, podcaster, just on Twitter, beat reporter, whatever, you probably have some aspirations to become, a national guy. You want more of a presence. Mm-hmm. You want to be respected in the world of sports journalism. Who wouldn't? This is completely normal and natural and fine. But because of the BMM's stranglehold on sports media, it really encourages and cultivates a situation in which you agree with them and you echo their opinions and you amplify their messages, because they'll pay attention to you, especially if you are supposed to be representing and sort of allied with their bitter rival. Like, it makes sense if you are a Sixers blogger to sit here and mimic the message of the BMM, because you want to get where the BMM is. They are gatekeepers on the biggest sports media networks.
Man.
Like, it is an insidious little green hand. And you know what? I take my little top hat off.
The end game is to get a guest spot on the Re-Roundables podcast by any means necessary. And if that's dragging your own team by the BMM's rules, so be it. No, but it's true. It's like, Simmons is such a divisive player, so I think it's a couple layers here. I think he's gruel because we're scoring obsessed, Meanwhile, he's like one of the best shooters in the league, right? If you want to talk in a vacuum, his like true shooting percentage is crazy. He just takes the best shots.
It's like top 10 in field goal percentage.
He's insane. Like, we don't hammer this. We used to hammer this home more, but I want to start again. He takes the best shots, dunks. So even if he can't shoot from free throw like a ninja, and even though he doesn't have Steph Curry's range, he's got an amazing efficiency on the court, and that's very, very, very valuable. And his name always pops up because he's got kind of like a weakness to his game, for sure. He's not perfect.
But it is also completely connected to that the Sixers are the Celtics' main foe. And they've been gaslighting the Sixers successfully. Wilt Chamberlain, Dr. J, Charles Barkley, Allen Iverson, Joel Embiid, Ben Simmons, over and over, Sam Hinkie, over and over and over. Sixers successfully get gaslit by the BMM repeatedly.
Once you see the tiny green top hat, you cannot unsee it. And, I lived a basketball fan life before being BMM woke. And I was like, oh, yeah, Wilt Chamberlain is trash. Bill Russell is awesome. Point taken. Now I'm like, oh, there's a total agenda here that I missed, right? And
I mean, it's indisputable that Boston voices control sports media. That's not even like a conspiratorial weird thing to say. We know it.
Yeah.
We know it. Like,
and respect, they took it. It's their thing. Like,
no props. Like, shine their buckles on their boots. By all means. Like, they did a great job infiltrating at every level. But like, there is no question that the agenda of Boston teams completely floods sports dialogue. So when you take that into account, who are the Celtics most worried about? They're not that worried about Giannis. They're not that worried about
Miami.
The Raptors. Miami, maybe. We'll see. We'll see what happens with Miami. Mm-hmm. The Sixers, their traditional, most hated rival in the East, who they battled with between Wilt and Bill Russell, and they have successfully gaslit for decades, generations.
Yeah.
Like, the Sixers are an existential threat to the Boston Celtics. To the Boston Celtics. They've got two guys who are significantly better than anyone on Boston and might be there for the next decade. The Celtics are fucking cooked unless the Sixers trade Ben Simmons. That's why they've been trying to do it for 3 years straight. It's been a relentless campaign to get Ben Simmons moved in order to take away the threat of the Philadelphia 76ers. You see the Boston media. James Harden is an absolute disgrace. He's a total loser. And I think the Sixers should give up their entire future and Ben Simmons and everything of value for him. What do you really think?
I know.
Why do you want that to happen so badly when you think James Harden is a toxic loser? Why would you have this agenda?
Right.
Interesting. Very interesting.
I watch a BMM segment on TV where the tiny green hand was like, James Harden is a disgrace, not only on the court, but off the court. And the BMM person was like, I'm going to hold all you James Harden supporters accountable because we're sitting at home while he's gallivanting around. It's just not ethical. And I was like, what are we doing? Like, it's like we have forgotten how... It was a discussion about player empowerment and how the league no longer looks like the league we love because these players, the people within the place are running the place. I don't like to talk in those other terms, And I'm like, yes, that sounds correct to me. Or just like a reasonable thing, a phenomenon. And to lament the passing of what you recognize as an NBA league is weird. And then as soon as you kind of scratch the surface, it's just a roundabout way to kind of position the Celtics in a favorable light or even influence a move like trading Ben Simmons away from Philadelphia. And we forget about what the Celtics did to Isaiah Thomas, I think. And I think players like James Harden remember that. Like, yo, I'm in it for me. And if I don't dictate my own career path, then I will will be vulnerable to treatment like the Boston Celtics, how they treated Isaiah Thomas, and it's multifaceted. So it's like all these different things, and it's like Jackie McMullen interviewing Kendrick Perkins about Ben Simmons. Like, how's that gonna go?
Well, Perkins is always going to be on Ben Simmons' side, so you don't have to worry about that.
True, and
Because
LeBron's side.
Right, because he's a clutch guy. Mm-hmm. So Perkins, you can literally look at his opinions. They just are based on who's down with clutch.
And we want these people to be villains, right? Like, it's just that I think it's important to understand that, or for me to understand that we don't have to think in these terms.
This brings us to another related topic. We have to address this Tatum situation. So he's apparently grown 2 inches, taken another jump over the last week, 2 weeks. When have they played? 2 months ago, he's jumped again, another leap. He's somehow even better than he was after taking multiple leaps.
Listen, Jayson Tatum talks to pawns. He talks to pawns.
I'm going to ask you a question. It's harsh. It's harsh. Is Jayson Tatum the most overrated player in NBA history? I want to let's
take
be
it
fair.
seriously. Yeah.
Let's be fair.
Okay.
I'm not saying this, out of vengeance for the BMM.
You're not trying to.
I'm acknowledging their effectiveness.
Yeah. Oh,
hats off.
Tiny green hats off.
Little buckled boots.
He is, in the modern age, I have rarely seen a player as touted as Jayson Tatum without the results and without the kind of creativity or imagination. Like, he doesn't capture anyone's imagination, yet he's put on this pedestal as if he does. And the other players come to mind are Giannis Antetokounmpo, back-to-back MVPs. I'm like, I don't know about that. Someone will say, is LeBron James the most overrated? No, he's properly rated. He's the best of all time. So your argument, your question sounds like you have some thoughts on it. So,
well, I would say this. There are certainly players who are overrated as like a rookie, right? Like an Andrew Wiggins. Won Rookie of the Year, put up some hollow stats. People thought he was a rising star. Even though he was a terrible defensive player, he had a good highlight against James Harden and people's, but that gets sniffed out. Those things end. And now everyone thinks Andrew Wiggins sucks because he mostly has. He might even be underrated at this point.
Yeah, I think he's underrated.
But generally that's what happens, right? Oh, this guy is sick. Oh, it turns out he's not. Okay, sure.
Donovan Mitchell.
But so we'll get to Mitchell in a moment. But when it comes to Tatum, let's give him his credit, right? He's a good young player.
For sure. And
he came into the league, in his teens, right? So that's what's...
He was 14.
13 years old, and a member of the NBA. But that's sort of part of the conversation about him. That he's just so young, though. Like, to do this at this age, he's just so young. I'm like, okay. I hear that. That's true. He does have a lot of years left to improve. No doubt. But, like, when we talk about him being like a top 10 player, it's just outrageous. He's a good player. You look at him, he scores in the top 15 in the league on a league average true shooting percentage. That's cool. That's cool. That's not great. That's cool. He's an average high volume scorer. That's a valuable person to have on your team. That's cool. Defensively, he's a good weak side disruptor. Mm-hmm. He's not incredible on the ball. He's a bit of a prom king offensively, averaged 3 assists and 2 turnovers. Mm-hmm. He's basically just an ISO scorer who operates at a league average, efficiency.
Yeah.
There is nothing about his game that, to your point, says, holy shit, what have we unlocked here? Yeah. Where is this guy going? What could he become? I don't see that. Those abilities that we talked about with other guys earlier, the Hardens and the Simmons and the Jokic, like, he doesn't have any of that.
No,
none of it. He's not an apex creator. He takes dumb shots.
Yeah, and there's
I don't know.
there's weaknesses in Luka's game too, and I think he is going to solve those because players get better at his age. But Tatum is not even close to that. But he's a like you said, he's a good player, and I think he's one of those guys that you have no option but to extend at a high price, right? He's like Ingram, Mitchell, the players we discussed last time, De'Aaron Fox. Like, you could see what your options are, but you're better off just keeping him. Well,
that's a good question. The guys you just mentioned, is Tatum better than Donovan Mitchell? Is he better than Brandon Ingram? Is he better than Siakam? I mean, that's the category of player he's in, and yet you do not hear about these guys the same way. And that's at the root of this idea of him being incredibly overrated because A, he went to Duke, B, he was drafted by the Celtics, and C, because his skill set is scoring and doing things like jab steps and turnaround jumpers.
It's some 90s basketball.
Yeah, it's grill master Jordan originalism. Like, the vectors for his overratedness are just out of control.
Yeah.
Like, you have the BMM, you have Jordan originalism, and then you have fucking Duke basketball. Just like the archetype of the most unjustly lauded NCAA system of all. He really hits all those targets. And most of it is not due to him, his fault at all. He did choose to go to Duke, though. Someone tricked him into going to Duke.
I mean, even the BMM, who's responsible for all these stats that we love, but they have to be, needs to be an asterisk at Basketball Reference because, they rework the stats to favor him. Even so, he's not a top 20 player. Like, he's number 17 in box plus minus. That was reworked to favor him.
And same with PIPM, just hard body Celtics fans. Like, they're just Celtics dudes doing all these stats. Yeah. There's Celtics dudes making every news report, making every list. I mean, again, he's a good player. How is he better than Brandon Ingram? In what way? Tell me.
I like.
Is he better?
I think he's right there with him.
But no one talks about Brandon Ingram in these terms. No one. No one talks about Donovan Mitchell or Siakam in these terms. They are respected as good young players. They all average the same per game. They all are in that, 13th, 14th, 15th, 16th, 17th in the league. They're all in that area. They all have the same efficiency that's about league average, a tick above or a tick below. Mm-hmm. They're all right there. There is no quantifiable difference between them. Some are a little better on defense. Some are a little better at passing. They're all the same. But he has been elevated beyond them due to Duke, due to Boston, due to Jordan originalism.
And you absolutely cannot give him the MVP. But Giannis Antetokounmpo got back-to-back MVPs, and we still don't talk about him in the way that we hear about Jayson Tatum. And it's like, pick your fighter, right? It's like, well, I like Ken over you. And I'm like, well, they're the same guy, except one has blonde hair and one has black hair. It's like, but Ken's better. And I'm like, it's the same thing, but it's just your guy, so I get it. Aesthetics matter here. And it's funny when people say the eye test, I'm always just like, well, what's your favorite color? Is that what we're talking about? Because your favorite color is green, Tatum is your guy. And
you just look at him and Ingram. Like, Ingram is a better ball handler. Ingram is a better passer.
Better defender in theory.
Probably a better defender.
Yeah.
Again, when you look at stats like PIPM, they went out and decided, same with BPM, they went out and decided they were going to reward ISO scoring and off-ball defense. Weird that they decided those would be two key things that they wanted to accentuate. And then they would also diminish the relationship between rebounds and assists, which might help someone who doesn't pass.
In individual leaders for last season, regular season, for offensive box plus minus and defensive box plus minus, Tatum's not in the top 20. But together, he enters number 17 at a combined list, because it's like all this reworking of statistics to get Jayson Tatum in there somehow.
It's super wild, man.
Yeah.
What is he good at on offense? He is a volume scorer at a league average efficiency who doesn't pass, and yet he has an elite offensive rating?
Yeah.
How?
he did well in the playoffs in the bub because he got hot, right? He shot well in the playoffs, so that really.
Well, that was also
elevated him.
because he played against the Sixers, who didn't have Ben Simmons, who he can't score on.
Styles make fights, right? And we knew that going into it. And it's annoying to always mention that when you mention stats like Anthony Davis doesn't have a real championship. But it's just like at some point that gets exhaustive and you sound like a whiner. And always calling out the BMM is funny because it is a constant. When you flip on TV, it is a constant. So it's just like, if you don't return the serve, then there is no dialogue here. And all we're getting fed is Tatum, which is
I mean, he's trending all the time for no reason.
For no reason.
It's surreal. It's just Tatum. Tatum's doing something. Tatum. The BMM is wild, man, and I really do respect them. Like, they have done such a good job at this, where you just see...
Those guys are great. Like, some of those guys are great.
You see Sixers Nation just caving, like falling in line to do their bidding, marching with their bagpipes. They're bagpipe carriers, really, what it boils down to.
Or open carry weapons. Like, we're watching the electoral vote right now, and it's kind of like the undoing, right? It's like, okay, you have this thing. Okay, the start of the story, Biden wins the election. Up until today, if you were following, it has its peaks and valleys depending on who you root for, but nothing happened. Biden won, and now he won.
Mr. President, I have found a sculpting hammer in a violin case. How is this going to adjust your election as the next president?
Is the killer a ghost wandering through this series unseen by other characters?
Your Honor, we have a busy friend.
Yeah, but it's just Hugh Grant. And Jayson Tatum is just Hugh Grant, right? It's just like, here's this thing. I'm like, okay, I understand this thing. I understand what this thing can become and what it was. And then everything changes, and I'm like, nothing happened, dudes. Like, all this talk about, is he top 3? Is he number 11 All-NBA? Did he grow 2 inches? I'm like, dudes, he's the same player he was when he stepped on the court.
Yeah, and look, Hugh Grant, innocent. But my thing about Tatum is, I'm not hating on him. I think he's pretty good. I don't think you're hating on him either. It's just that he's this vessel for the hopes and dreams of the BMM.
I know that feeling.
They just wanted to conjure a star, because you know what? They didn't get one. And that's the problem with Boston.
Right.
And they refuse to acknowledge that they have topped out. I think Tatum can keep improving, and he'll be a good player. He'll be Paul George.
He might be an all-star this year.
He's an all-star last year.
Yeah,
because of the BMM.
He might repeat. And last year was kind of... I don't think he was an all-star last year, personally.
But I'm saying, his ceiling is a bigger version of Paul George, who can play power forward more comfortably, but does not have the on-ball disruptiveness, and also cannot run like a pick and roll or run an offense the same way.
And you'll take that. You'll take that. That's a
really good player. Yeah. Really good player. That's his max to me. He can become that sort of guy.
God, yeah. If Obi Toppin was that good, I'd be happy.
Excellent player.
Yeah.
That can be your best star, but it's not enough to win a championship.
No.
And I think that's really what it's at the root of the BMM here. They are just trying to pretend they have a star. And they could have traded Tatum and gotten Anthony Davis. He is that guy. They could have made moves. They could get James Harden.
They manufacture that value, but they're not going to deliver on it, right?
But now they believe their own hype.
Right.
They
God.
drank
They're
their
buying
own,
high and selling
They
low.
drank their own green Kool-Aid.
Yeah,
they drank their own Shamrock Shake.
I mean, it's an interesting... Tatum will always be interesting to me as long as he's in Boston because of all these different little phenomenons, right? And
so if he was playing in Utah and Donovan Mitchell was playing in Boston, it would be exactly reversed. We'd be hearing about Donovan Mitchell as a potential top 9 player in the league, and we'd be viewing Jayson Tatum alongside Siakam and Ingram as a good young player that it's not a superstar yet, but he might develop into something. It would 100% be flip-flopped.
And yeah, I agree. And it's an important distinction to make that this is not just a big market phenomenon. This is a singular voice in NBA media. It is a way to describe what we're seeing, because honestly what we're seeing is simple and very, very complicated. And I think a lot of people assume New York is this way. Like, we manufacture these things that aren't real. Like, LOL at all these scrubs that these Knicks fans are excited about. And it is because it's happening more in a place like Boston. If I'm rattling, like I think LA was kind of a mild aberration in the bub. I think Miami was a certain aberration, but certain things weren't. And I think the Sixers, my bad, the Celtics getting handled in the bub was kind of true to form. And when I think of contending teams this year, Boston is in the clear middle of the second tier, right?
I don't think they got better. I think they're a good team.
Hayward was good.
I think they're a good team.
Yeah.
And you can look at their offense and their defense. They're a good team. I do believe the Celtics' biggest issue is they don't have an actual superstar.
Ooh,
and that's why the BMM is so frantic and is so insistent that Tatum actually is one. Because they don't have one. He's a good player. He's going to be a good player. He's going to get better. But he does not top out as a superstar. He tops out as a guy who scores a bunch of points. Maybe he'll get more efficient. He can be a really devastating offensive weapon as a scorer from the 4 because it's tough to put a slower or smaller guy on him. Yeah, really good player. Like Tobias squared.
And yeah, right. I think since I'm rewatching The Sopranos, I'm in full therapy mode, as you can tell. But like the question would be, if the BMM was Tony Soprano and he's just like, Tatum is top 11, maybe even top 3. Ben Simmons is trash. He can't shoot. And I'm like, okay, I hear you. But after a year being like, why do you keep on bringing this up? Is it because you had Kyrie Irving and he walked away from you?
I mean,
he's a superstar, right?
Of course. And we're seeing Kyrie Irving was the best player on that team by a lot. He's the best player they've had
in a decade
since Kevin Garnett.
Oh, yeah,
and
true.
He left, and now they have to trash him constantly. And that's part of the reason that Kyrie probably doesn't want to talk to the media. He has his own eccentricities, of course, but he has been shat upon by the media because he left Boston. Like, these are all interconnected.
It's all
the
Boston.
Tatum stuff, the Boston trade stuff, the Kyrie stuff. It's all the BMM. They're everywhere, Quill.
And the trade for Isaiah Thomas. Like, when the BMM on TV claim that the league is in poorer hands with player empowerment, I just look to them. It's like, well, you guys messed it up for everyone else by doing so many players dirty. And like every superstar or every good player wants to leave Boston as soon as they get there. I remember Kyrie Irving was like, I don't think he was lying. He was like, this is cool. Boston is a historic franchise. I'm going to stay here for a long time. 4 months into it, he's like, hell no. No way. This isn't for me. And that's not just like a pre-planned narrative. He just didn't like it there because he has to listen to the Dropkick Murphys every time he comes out on the court.
I mean, the little green hand. What can you say?
This ain't reality TV. When's the last time you watched The Departed?
I feel like we're watching it every day, Quill.
Those rats.
Inside agents working for the BMM on the inside of Sixers Nation.
They're just like
doing the dirty work.
Wizards on their smartphones, or always tapping those keys. That blinking cursor of the BMM.
You'll love to see it. Shit. On that note, I think we've had enough. I feel like there's a little small man knocking at my door.
Is it a pawn? Because you shouldn't talk to him.
I just see a little top hat, but it could be a fez.
That nerd energy hits different.
I love cookies.
Save this one. Cookies.
Cookies.
I love cookies. I love cookies.